In the top stories, 2018 IMF report for St. Kitts and Nevis released. Survivor of diving catastrophe in Trinidad and Tobago speaks about the experience, and attorneys say cryptocurrency FTX was run as a personal fiefdom. Hello and welcome to the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Today is Wednesday, the 23rd of November, 2022. I'm Jason Davis. Nationally, in keeping with the principles of good governance and transparency, the government of St. Kitts and Nevis has authorized the release of the 2018 Article 4 International Monetary Fund, or IMF, report. The Executive Board of the IMF released the report on Monday, outlining the details of the Article 4 consultation with St. Kitts and Nevis, which concluded on September 14, 2018. The report indicated that the, quote, directors acknowledged significant challenges, including those associated with declining citizenship by investment inflows, financial sector vulnerabilities, tighter global financial conditions, and weather-related shocks. Against this background, directors encouraged policies to safeguard macroeconomic and financial stability, together with reforms to strengthen competitiveness and foster inclusive growth, end quote. It was noted that if no corrective policies are put in place, quote, public debt is expected to increase over the medium term as revenue from CBI receipts further declines, end quote. According to the IMF, major fiscal adjustment was necessary to reverse the debt dynamics, and recommendations were offered to address the issues. The report said, quote, the adjustment could focus on both revenue and expenditure measures, including streamlining tax incentives, restructuring activities funded by the Sugar Industry Diversification Foundation, and containing the wage bill through a multi-year framework. Recognizing the need to maintain fiscal buffers to assist in covering the cost of natural disasters, directors recommended the establishment of a Growth and Resilience Fund, also known as a GRF, which should be linked to a fiscal responsibility framework. They suggested that access to the GRF could be used to respond to adverse shocks and to support natural disaster resilience investment projects, end quote. Under Article 4 of the IMF's Articles of Agreement, the IMF holds bilateral discussions with members, usually every year. A staff team visits the country, collects economic and financial information, and discusses with officials the country's economic developments and policies. On return to headquarters, the staff prepares a report which forms the basis for discussion by the Executive Board. At the conclusion of the discussion, the Managing Director, as Chairman of the Board, summarizes the views of Executive Directors, which is then communicated to the country's authorities. The United States Embassy donated more than $108,000 to the Nevis Historical and Conservation Society for a project to conserve and stabilize the Bath Hotel and the Hermitage Inn in Nevis. The grant is part of the United States State Department Global Ambassadors Fund for Cultural Preservation, or AFCP, program. The project will include engineering works that include repairs to electrical wiring and plumbing, sealing of the roof, repairs to any windows and doors by skilled carpenters, as well as the repointing of the stonework where necessary by a master mason. In her remarks at the signing ceremony at the Bath Hotel on Tuesday, U.S. Ambassador to St. Kitts and Nevis and the OECS, Linda Tagliatella, said the signing ceremony demonstrates the United States' commitment to partnering with St. Kitts and Nevis to preserve its rich history and culture. The Ambassador's Fund for Cultural Preservation is a program that receives proposals from cultural museums, ministries of culture, NGOs, and other organizations around the world for a limited number of sponsorships. Through the AFCP Grants program, the U.S. supports the preservation of archaeological sites, historic buildings and monuments, museum collections, and forms of traditional cultural expression by providing funding to carry out an individual project to preserve cultural heritage in a specific priority country. Still on the national scene, St. Kitts and Nevis, Ecuador and Chile are coordinating a two-day forum on human rights defenders in environmental matters in Latin America and the Caribbean in Quito, Ecuador. The objective of the forum is to provide a space for discussion on the situation of human rights defenders in environmental matters, to examine the challenges faced by human rights defenders in environmental matters and the possible responses to these challenges. The forum will also examine how the ZIZ agreement can provide a supporting framework to regional and national levels. Darion Edmead, Environmental Education Officer in the Ministry of Environment, is representing St. Kitts and Nevis. He serves as the country's focal point for the ZIZ agreement and one of the coordinators for the Human Rights Forum. According to him, women, farmers, and indigenous people who fight against deforestation, extractives, or loss of cultural heritage or identity are the environmental defenders who are most exposed to abuse. He said, quote, "Every day they face abuse, threats, and harassment for their work addressing the triple planetary crisis of climate change, pollution, and nature loss," end quote. The forum is organized by the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, UNECLAC, and is in accordance with Decision I-6 on human rights defenders in environmental matters. Moving now to news on the regional scene. Out of Trinidad and Tobago, Christopher Budram, the lone survivor in the February 25 Paria diving incident, has described being in the pipeline as an unbelievable nightmare. Speaking during the Paria Commission of Inquiry on Tuesday, an emotional Budram said the men formed a human chain in the 30-inch pipeline to get themselves out of the situation. Here's more.
A distraught and emotional Christopher Budram recalled the events of